Imagine a ball rolls across the floor in front of you. Clearly its motion was caused by something, a kick, a push, a gust of wind. But whatever caused it must itself have been set in motion by something else, and that thing must have had a cause too, and so on. Does this chain of causes go backwards forever, or does it stop with a first cause? Welcome to Untangled Philosophy. Today we're exploring Aristotle's Prime Mover, which he identifies as the final cause of the universe. We'll uncover that it's pure actuality, it's motionless, it's immaterial, it's eternal, it moves things by being loved, and it's also God. So let's get to it. The basic idea behind Aristotle's concept of the prime mover is that everything is in motion. And by motion, Aristotle doesn't just mean physical movement like a ball rolling or a planet orbiting, but also change like heating up a cold bath or an acorn developing into an oak tree. Aristotle surmises that everything in motion must have been moved by something else, but he rejects the idea that there is an infinite series of causes. Ultimately, Aristotle concludes that there must have been a first mover, which itself is not moved, and this is what we call the unmoved mover or the prime mover. However, the prime mover isn't a first cause in the way that you might think. It's not like the Big Bang or an act of divine creation that sets everything in motion. Instead, Aristotle sees it as the ultimate why behind everything. In Aristotle's terminology of the four causes, it is not an efficient cause that explains how something came to be or the process of its coming to be. Instead, the prime mover is a final cause. It is the ultimate explanation of why everything exists and is the purpose of all motion. Everything is ultimately drawn towards the prime mover like a magnet attracting iron filings. So how does the prime mover explain motion? For Aristotle, we need more than something with the potential to cause motion. In Aristotle's teleological worldview, in which nature is goal-directed, everything is either in a state of potentiality or actuality. An acorn is a potential oak tree, for example. To be the ultimate source of motion, the prime mover must be in a state of actuality. And it's pure actuality. It's never been in a state of potentiality. And this is important because, as we'll see in a moment, Aristotle needs to explain the eternal motion of these celestial bodies. But why is the prime mover motionless? Well, because the prime mover is pure actuality, it cannot change. And if it cannot change, it cannot be in motion. Motion, after all, involves a transition from potential to actual. Cold water, for example, has the potential to be warm, and it becomes warm when it's heated. But the prime mover has no potentiality. It is fully actual. This is why the prime mover is also known as the unmoved mover. It causes motion in other things without itself being in motion. And this is all really interesting because if the prime mover is motionless and unchanging, it must also be immaterial. It cannot be made of matter. Why? Material things can be acted upon. They have the potential to change. Think of a lump of clay. It can be moulded or broken or transformed into an urn. But the prime mover cannot be changed, and so it cannot be material. The prime mover is also eternal. Aristotle believes that the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets, are eternal. After all, they move predictably and steadily. They're not slowing down, they're not speeding up, and if their motion is eternal, then the cause of that motion must also be eternal. Only an eternal, unchanging substance can cause eternal motion, and so the prime mover must be eternal. Okay, but how does an immaterial, changeless thing really cause motion? Aristotle's answer is fascinating. It causes motion by being an object of love. This is important because being loved does not involve a change in the beloved, and we need to ensure that the prime mover can cause motion without undergoing change. Think of it this way. A bowl of milk attracts the cat, therefore causing motion in the cat without itself undergoing change. The prime mover is like milk, and everything else is a cat. And this is where it gets stranger, because Aristotle thinks that even the celestial bodies must have souls capable of feeling love, because their love for the prime mover causes their eternal motion. Yes, planets are alive, but that's not a weird thing for the ancients because they believed that the planets were divine beings anyway most of the time. Which brings us to one of our final points. The prime mover is God. Or at least the supreme God. But what does God actually do? Can he do anything at all if he's unchanging and motionless? Aristotle argues that the prime mover's existence is like the best possible life, a life of pure contemplation. In the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle says that the highest human activity is intellectual thought, and so God is in a state of sublime contemplation. He must, after all, think of something, Aristotle says, or else he would be no better than a sleeping human. But since the value of thought is determined by what is being thought, God must be thinking of the most perfect of things, which is himself, since he is perfection. Since God's nature is thought, and he contemplates only perfection, his thinking becomes a self-referential act. His thinking is a thinking of thinking. And that's enough Aristotle for today. Some people find Aristotle's idea of thinking profound, while others dismiss it as nonsense. What do you think? If you enjoyed this video, please like. It helps other people like you find the video so they can enjoy it too. Thank you for watching. See you next time.